Morning, everyone. I'm going to ask us to take our seats, please, and get going. I'm pleased to call this business meeting to order today. We have, as you know, a very full agenda. We're going to vote on nominations for key leadership posts at the Environmental Protection Agency, wildlife conservation and recycling legislation, as well as 10 General Services Administration resolutions. Let me just take a minute and give you the run of the show. Just listen up, please. Everybody, just listen up. Run of show. We'll vote on the nominations of David Allman to be EPA Assistant Administrator for Enforcement and Compliance Assurance, and Carlton Waterhouse to be EPA Assistant Administrator of Land and Emergency Management. I am anxious to see both these talented and dedicated men confirmed, and I'm glad we're finally taking an important step toward that, and that happening in today's process. And we'll vote on the General Service Administration resolutions, and then on the recycling legislation by voice. Then we'll recess the business meeting and reconvene here at noon to debate amendments on the Recovering America Wildlife Act, RAWA. Then we'll stack and take any necessary votes off the floor at 1:30 in the President's room. I want to speak quickly on a few of the business meeting matters. He's not here, but I want to acknowledge Senator Heinrich and Senator Blunt for their leadership on RAWA, which many of you have joined, and their commitment to working with our committee to improve it. This legislation, as you know, seeks to address a serious challenge that we face, biodiversity loss, which threatens our economy, our ecosystems, and our health. And while I believe we still need to find a way to pay for the bill as it moves to the floor, we have a moral imperative to conserve all of the species with which we share this planet. On balance, Recovering America's Wildlife Act is an historic bill that advances shared conservation goals. On the two recycling bills, one that I introduced with my Senate Recycling Caucus co-chair, Senator Bozeman, who's joined us, thank you, John, and Ranking Member Capito, and another authored by Senator Capito, and Senator Bozeman and I and others have joined in supporting that legislation, co-sponsoring that legislation. Both of these bills are bipartisan. I think they're a product of the best of our committee's tradition of working together on conservation and sustainability issues. And I'd like for us to proceed without delay. Before we do, I want to ask our ranking member, Senator Capito, for any remarks that she has.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank everybody for being here. In the interest of time, I would like to submit my opening statement for the record. I know everybody's going to be sad about that.
I will not object.
Just for it.
All right.
You can give me a standing ovation later.
We turn to our staff. Adam, MF, do we have a majority of the committee's members physically present and mentally present?
We can't do Waterhouse yet, so we can do these.
All right. Mary Frances tells me that we can start off by taking up some of these GSA resolutions. Committee noticed 11 GSA resolutions for consideration at this business meeting. At the request of one of our members and after consultation with the ranking member, we're deferring consideration of one of these resolutions, the resolution for lease space in Sumner, Washington. And I call up the remaining 10 GSA resolutions en bloc. For the record, the chair observes that a quorum is present in the room. Given the presence of a quorum, I move to approve these resolutions and report these matters favorably to the Senate. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. The legislation is favorably reported. This All right, thank you. Next, I want to call up our recycling legislation. First, S-3742, the Recycling Infrastructure and Accessibility Act 2022, and S-3743, the Recycling and Composting Accountability Act of 2022, and the Carper Substitute Amendment number 1 to 3743 en bloc. I move that the Carper Amendment 1 to S-3743 be adopted, and the committee report both S-3742 and S-3743 as amended. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you very much. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? No. We have one nay. Independent of the chair, the ayes have it, and these bills are favorably reported. All right.
Still need some.
Still waiting for Senator Markey, and one more member.
If I could
Yes, but
interject then,
we
Mr.
look.
Chairman, very briefly, I just want to thank you for your leadership on the recycling. Thank you for the hearings that you've done, and I look forward to having this committee continue to look into and work on these issues. In the arena of single-use plastic, which is the stuff that most often ends up in oceans and rivers and all that, the American plastics industry has managed to achieve a grand total of 2% recycled content. I tease them by saying that's how much falls in accidentally. Now, that's not true, but it's a measure of how helpless the recycling effort has been, particularly as it affects that really important single-use discardable throwaway plastic, not car parts, not children's car seats, not bicycle helmets, not stuff that is multiple use, but the throwaway plastic. We can do a lot better, and I thank you, Chairman, for your leadership to help us get there.
This is, as you know, very much a team effort. My wife and I compost at home. We have a big bin behind our house, and turn it into to really fertile soil for our plants and stuff in our yard. We ought to have the ability to compost in our offices, and as well as to recycle. And we're working with the Senator Capito's staff and I think Senator Bozeman's staff and the architects of the Capitol to make sure that we start doing that and they enable that activity. So we're looking forward to that. Anybody else want to speak to any of these bills as we're awaiting the arrival of our two colleagues? Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, please.
actually, not to the bills, but to follow up on the point Senator Whitehouse was making.
Please go ahead.
The Tuesday edition of the Science Times has in it the results of an investigation that found that the plastic in the ocean is largely binding with other microorganisms and dropping to the bottom of the ocean, changing the ecosystems tremendously. And that while that was not the expectation, we thought plastic would float and gather in kind of garbage centers in the ocean. Some 98% is dropping down way below the surface, much of it to the bottom of the ocean, and is also changing temperatures in the process. So we're learning a lot more about microplastic pollution and how it alters the fundamental nature of ocean ecosystems, and none of the news is good news. And just continues why we have to keep working on this intensely.
Particularly the news that microplastics have now been found in human blood.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Sheldon, but I've seen reports that the amount of plastic in the oceans now weighs more than the fish and mammals and so forth.
That's the projection for the year 2050, when many of us will, with any luck, still be around, although perhaps not as mobile as we are right now. But for sure, our children will be around, and I think the notion that we're going to leave to our children an ocean that has, by mass, more waste plastic in it than it has living fish is something that ought to drive us to fairly diligent action. Some greatest generation, we are.
While we're on the topic, Senator Murkowski and I worked together on the Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, and we just decided we would revert to inviting people to bring their water bottles with them, just symbolically. And I would suggest that here on the Environment Committee, we ought to consider doing the same thing rather than having the small disposables. An idea worth considering.
Others, please. Senator Bozeman? All right.
Well, I guess I can talk now since we're still waiting. I was trying to say.
We're all waiting for that opening statement.
Maybe this, on bated breath for what I have to say. Well, I am pleased with the recycling bills. I mean, I think it came out in the hearings, and certainly from a small rural community in a smaller rural state, the opportunities for recycling kind of ebb and flow because economically it hasn't been a winner for our counties or our states or our cities. And so I think that this is the point, is to try to get it out into the rest of the country so it can be more effective. And I look forward to that, and I think it's a good start. I also would like to thank Senators Heinrich and Blunt for the, we're calling it RAWA, the wildlife bill. It's been something that's been in the making, according to Senator Heinrich, for 20 years. It hasn't been easy, I'll say that, to try to muscle this one through committee, but I think we do need to look at the pay for again, as the committee chairman mentioned in his opening remarks. So with that, that's a synopsis of my opening statement.
Thank you for that synopsis. Anyone else, please?
I'd be delighted to
Senator Whitehouse.
join Senator Capito in appreciation for Senator Blunt and Senator Heinrich on the wildlife bill. I think they put a lot of work into it, and it's a very, very good bill. I'm an enthusiastic supporter of it, but as we look down the panel here at the Oceans State population, particularly the Ocean State population, I look forward to the day when we put the same effort into conservation, species protection for oceans and coasts that we put into uplands and freshwater. As you know, I think we should rename the Land and Water Conservation Fund the Upland and Freshwater Conservation Fund to more accurately reflect what it actually does. And we're continuing to try to develop the Oceans and Coasts Fund as a parallel, a coastal and oceans parallel to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. And as I enthusiastically support Martin's bill and Roy's bill, and I think it's really, really good, but there's a part of me that wishes it covered the creatures of the sea and the coasts as well. And so
With this,
we'll
could I
continue to
ask
work
a
on that.
question of you of the bill? So this is going to go to the state Fish and Wildlife organization, or state organizations. Could your state not use some of this money for that very purpose? No?
I think we may be able to, but the focus of the bill and the population, the species to which it was directed are the terrestrial species. And it gets a little bit more complicated when you're dealing with fisheries that are moving about the way they're moving about now because of the warming of the seas. So, as I said, I support this bill and we'll try to use it to be as helpful as we can in my home state. But there's a persistent lean in a lot of these conservation programs towards upland and freshwater and away from coast and ocean.
Understood. I was thinking.
Will my colleague?
Yeah, go ahead.
Colleague yield? Thank you. I agree completely with Senator Whitehouse on this issue, and that's why I have an amendment that's pending in regards to the coastal programs. I support this bill, and I compliment the chair and the ranking member for working out the issues so we can move this bill forward. But this bill leaves out an essential part of habitat restoration, and that deals with the coastal areas. So in June of last year, I filed bipartisan legislation with Senator Graham that deals with habitat restoration along the coastal communities. It's been in our committee now for almost a year. We don't have that many markups on legislation. So I am, we'll have a chance during the discussion of an amendment process as to whether we can include that in this legislation, because I do think it balances the underlining bill for the coastal communities. I strongly support this bill. When you look at the way that the state of Maryland comes out percentage-wise, it's not as high as we do in many other programs. And I support this. I recognize it's based upon the factors that are not as favorable to the state of Maryland. And to answer the ranking member's question directly, it's very challenging to use these funds for coastal habitat restoration. And that's why we filed the separate legislation, which, by the way, is existing policy. We have a program today on coastal restoration. It's a voluntary program in which public and private sectors can work get technical assistance from the federal government. It's been in existence since 1985. And the legislation that Senator Graham and I authored codifies that program and provides an authorized level. So I think it's a real, it complements the bill that's an underlining bill and provides, I think, a better balance among all the states dealing with habitat restoration.
All right, I think we're ready to roll. I want to thank everybody for staying so we can get this show on the road. And next, I want to call up presidential nomination 1555, David Allman of Michigan to be Assistant Administrator for Enforcement and Compliance Assurance of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Bozeman. No. Mrs. Capito.
No.
Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer. No. Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Ernst.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Graham.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Enhoff.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Lummis.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Markey. Aye. Mr. Merkley.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders.
Aye.
Mr. Shelby.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Stabenow.
Aye.
Mr. Sullivan.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Mr. Wicker.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, the yeas are 10 and nays are 10.
All right. Next, I want to call up the presidential nominations. 1556 of Carlton, Waterhouse of Virginia to be Assistant Administrator for Land and Emergency Management of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably to the Senate. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Capito.
No.
Mr. Carter.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Duckworth.
Aye.
Ms. Ernst.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Graham.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Enhoff.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Lummis.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Markey.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy. Mr. Padilla.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders.
Aye.
Mr. Shelby.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Stabenow. Mr. Sullivan.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Mr. Wicker.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Chairman, the yeas are 10 and nays are 10.
All right. That concludes this morning's committee votes. My thanks to everybody for help us get this far. We will reconvene here at noon. Reconvene here at noon, please. Thanks very much.